Yes, ma'am, we are.
Great. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here and give you a brief intro to using a virtual machine and doing cloud computing. And I'll be using RStudio Cloud to introduce you to that. About me, I am a research scientist at the Northwest Fisheries Science Center in Seattle. I work in the mathematical biology division. And I've posted a link to the notes that I'm showing here. And up there in the About Me tab, I have put some helpful links, sort of links to my stuff, my GitHub profile. I do a lot of training for NOAA staff in scientific workflow, particularly in RStudio, GitHub, but I also teach time series analysis. And I have training material up on the links that I have here under About Me. But I also wanted to alert you to the NIMS, our user group sessions, and you can find our website there and links to our calendar there. And we have a really active group that discusses issues about R and also just scientific workflow using R Markdown, and we really dig into some advanced issues that are needed for our work in NOAA fisheries. And our sessions are recorded in the materials up there. So encourage you to go check that out. And I will have, after this session, I will have Erin send out the links if you want to get on the chat, sort of a group that we have for the NIMS user group, if you want to be alerted about upcoming sessions. We do them once a month. Okay, and I'm also very involved in the open science community and involved with OpenScapes and NIMS OpenScapes and our Govies. If you're interested in that, you can click on those links there. All right, so a little bit about the logistics. So for this session, what I want to do is I'm going to start off and talk the first part about RStudio Cloud for individuals. And then in the second part, I'll talk about some of the issues for people who want to collaborate using RStudio Cloud or who want to instruct using RStudio Cloud. During the session, you can definitely unmute and ask me a question, but because it's pretty large, I think using the chat is likely to be easier. And you can put messages in the chat there. If anyone knows the answer, do feel free to jump in and answer. And I will also do my best to follow the chat. But if I lose track and I'm not answering your question, feel free to unmute and ask the question. All right, okay, so let me put the link here in case some of you are coming in late. In the chat are the links to the notes that you see right here. Let's go to part one. Okay, so what is RStudio Cloud? It's basically, you can think of it like RStudio in a website, but it's a virtual machine and a environment that you can set up. So your R environment, all the packages, anything that you need, you create this environment and you're using that in the cloud. And a nice feature of this is that you can share that space with anyone who you'd like to share it with, so they can see a copy of it and run your code. So this is really handy, especially if like you want to be able to share some work and you want somebody to just be able to run it. You don't want them to have to install anything. They actually don't need a computer. I mean, you could do it all on your phone if you felt like it. So, I mean, I guess you could have some work up there and work from your phone on RStudio Cloud if you wanted to. So, and it works. If you're familiar with RStudio, it's going to feel absolutely the same. It's almost the same on RStudio Cloud. Neat thing, you don't have to install anything, you just need a browser. So why use RStudio Cloud? Like I said, you don't have to install anything, so that's really nice. You can set up a workspace, everything that's there, all the packages, files, and then you can share that with someone, they can run your code. That's how I've mainly used it as an individual. And, as an instructor, it's definitely useful to kind of reduce that friction points for students so they don't have to install anything. It can be, in the instructor part, I'll discuss some of the hiccups that can happen for instructors. Mainly just you have to spend money to get something that's really effective. For individual projects or just sharing with a couple people, the free version actually works fine. You get about, I think it's 25 hours a month of computing time, and that's generally plenty. It's not a very powerful machine, but as long as you're not doing heavy computing, it works pretty well. And then another thing, and this is something to keep in mind, is I would say it's a really easy entry to cloud computing. And this is the way that the field of code development and teaching code, that's the way it's moving. So I think it's good to start getting familiar with cloud computing and getting familiar with the ideas of creating these containers or environments that you work in. So what that means is that you specify, what version of the programming language. So in this case, we're going to be doing R. So what version of R, all the packages, everything that you need, you specify that. You specify that environment. And then other people who join in, they're just going into that space and working just the way you've set it up. So as I said, the field of code development is moving that way because it really helps people start working together and coding together much quicker. All right, so setup. This is great. There's no setup. You don't even have to create an account. You can just log in with your Google email. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to RStudio Cloud. I'll post this in the chat. You could go there. Nope. So we're just going to go here and I'm going to click. Go ahead and just scroll down, log in with Google. I'm just going to log in with my NOAA because that's managed by Google. And there we are. So I have a number of projects here. And let me give you, let's see here, go back over here for a sec. Okay, so first, I will just click on, let's see, which one should I do? Let's do this one. Okay. Actually, let me go back a little, let me go a little bit slower here, give you orientation here. So what you're going to see the first time you're on here is you're going to see this thing that says workspace, and you can click that. And then within that workspace, you can create a new project. So if you're using RStudio, on your desktop, then you know you can kind of go up in the upper left and create a new project. So this is going to work just the same, but I've got this nice big blue button here. So I'm going to click that and to do a new project, and it gives me these options. I could do a new RStudio project. This is a new thing they're doing. They're also rolling out that you can use this as a Jupyter hub. So if you also program in Python, or you can program in Python in RStudio, by the way. There is Python on RStudio Cloud, but Python users are more familiar with using Jupyter notebooks. So if you like that, in the future, you'll be able to use Jupyter notebooks here also. Right now, you have to have a premium account, which is kind of pricey. So we're just going to do the new RStudio project. And I'll show you as we get farther in how you can also open a project from a Git repository. And that'll be nice because you can just get all the files that are on a Git repository right into RStudio Cloud. So let's just start with a new blank one now. So we just click that. It takes a little while. I'm just going to set up. So hopefully you are able to follow along here. So there we go. So hopefully for you RStudio users, this looks familiar. This is the default here. We've got our console here. We have our environment here, and we have the files down here. We have plots here. You can install packages. I'll show you that in a moment. And now we can use this just as you are familiar. So you can make a little R script here. Okay. So yeah, there we go. I can then, run this just like I would normally. I can interact with it just like I would with RStudio on my desktop. So as I said, you can set up the environment the way you want, and let's kind of look at that. So you can set up the environment for yourself. You were just working here, but imagine too that you're kind of creating something and you want to be able to share this with somebody else. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, what we want to do when we want to share this, we want to set the environment up exactly how we want it. We want the person to just be able to go to a copy of this space and be up and running. We don't want to be saying, okay, you need to install XYZ. Whenever how it is, whenever you're sharing somebody, you're going to have to tell them like all the different R packages they have to install, and that can be a hassle to say the least. So first thing what we want to do is we need to decide what version of R we're going to be using. So you look up here, you can see we have a few different versions of R. So if that's needed, you can pick the version of R. So I'm just going to stick with the most recent version. So, but I do want to add some packages. So I want to install, let's install Tidy first. So now what's going to be happening is it's installing everything into this workspace. It's going to set it up. And when I come back to this workspace later, or if I share a link to this workspace, it's all going to be set up. So while this is working, I'm going to do a few other setups for it. So let's first give it a name. good. Okay. Okay, you can watch how much RAM it's using. In the free account, I only have 1 gig of RAM. And that's a pretty serious limitation, it will turn out. But you can watch how it's working. Just using that. Okay. I can set the settings here, and because I want to be able to share this, I want to make it public. So I'm going to go here. I clicked on access. Who can view this? Right now it's private, only I can view it, but I want to share it with you so you can experience what it's like to open this. So that's what I want there. Oops, sorry. Okay. Let's double check that's right. Yes. Okay. So now I've made it public. All right. So now it has installed Tidyverse. That's great. And library. Test file for you to run. Okay. So everything is working as normal. You know, if you're familiar with RStudio, all the commands are really exactly the same. And all the toolbars up here are going to be the same. Let's just do sample code here and paste that in, and then see if this works. I will get to that question in just a second. And let's save that and let's see if it works here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and you see the plot shows up over there. Okay, so let's see the question. If you installed LaTeX packages in the cloud space, would they be there next time you are logged in as well? So LaTeX is already installed. LaTeX is installed, and yeah, I don't know the answers to that question. I have not had to deal with that. But there is a full LaTeX installation. So, you know, often those installations have a way of installing the packages on the fly. Yeah, I'm not positive. The RStudio folks are quite responsive. You know, they're still developing this, so you could reach out to them if that was something that you needed. But again, they may already have, since it has a full installation, those packages may already be there if they're standard. Yep. So, okay, great. Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, I will also say, in my experience, like to be able to build a PDF without having to do anything is a huge bonus. So like when I'm teaching our Markdown, I love using RStudio Cloud because they can just click build to PDF and it just works, and they can download the PDF files. They don't have to install anything. It's so nice because I have suffered a lot trying to help people get tech installed on their local machines so that they can build PDFs. especially in a teaching situation when you don't know what kind of access the person has on their computer or what kind of operating system they have. Okay, so now I've kind of set this up, this environment, and now I would like to share it. So that's super easy. All I do is when I'm in this space, I copy that URL at the top and I give it to someone. And what's going to happen, you shall see. And I'm going to paste it for you and you can open it and you'll get to see what happens. You will be able to open a temporary copy of this. There we go. So if you click on that, you're going to get a temporary copy. I am going to here resume. Okay, so I have two different browsers open. So so that I can demonstrate this, I have to have one where I'm the student. So I have I'm logged into two separate RStudio Cloud accounts. Okay, so this is a different RStudio Cloud account. You can see it doesn't have my regular logo up there. So what I can do is that link that I just sent you, I can paste that here. And it's going to deploy it. Takes a moment. All right, there we go. If we look at the packages, we're going to see that you know, ggplot is there. You know, it's basically I installed tidyverse, so all those things are there, and things are just going to work. So I'm going to go here. I've got my test.r. I can now select this and run it. And there we go. It's just going to work. So you notice here that it says temporary copy. So basically what this is just that. It's a temporary copy. When I close this, it's not going to persist. But it's nice. I can play around in this environment that that my other account created. And I don't see those packages installed. Can you open test.r and run it? You have to click this link that I posted right there. Okay, great. Okay, if it's working, those packages are there. And if you can say library ggplot2, then it's definitely there because that's not a default package here. To see the packages, you click on the packages tab over here. And then if you, and it's a long list of things, so it can get kind of lost here. But you want to look at that one there. So this is a temporary copy. When I close this, if I make some changes, those changes aren't going to stay there. It's just a temporary copy. It's going to go away as soon as I close this. However, if I want to take this space and now have a permanent copy, I can click Save a Permanent Copy. So, you know, this is nice if you want to create a template for someone and they want to use that template. It's going to have all the packages, going to have whatever files you have there. They can save a permanent copy and now they have their own copy. It's not linked back to yours in any way. They've kind of used yours as a template to create their own project. Okay, so let's go and I'm going to go back to my other, I'm going to go back to Chrome. I'm on Firefox now. I'm going to go leave this account. Let's go back over here. So I'm back at my NOAA account here. And I'm going to go back to my workspace, and I'm going to go to this our Markdown one so that we can see how we can share a space with someone so they can make our Markdown files. So I'm just going to keep going there. Takes a moment. Okay. So this has, I'm going to click on the files. It's got a few examples of different kinds of R Markdown, and we're going to play around with those. And let me make sure that it's public so I can share it with you. Okay. So access, okay, everyone. This is often a mistake that I make, as I forget to change the access, and then I try to share the link and the person says, hey, I can't open it. So if that happens to you, just so you've set it to open access again. Okay. I don't see the make a permanent copy button. I'll show that again in a second. I'm going to show it with the R Markdown. So I'm going to share a new link in the chat. So this is the R Markdown right here. Okay. So now I'm going to leave my NOAA account. So this is the NOAA Federal. And then I'm going over to my student one. I'm going to click Firefox here. Okay. So here I'm in a different account, different browser. And so this was that PSAW. And here's the save permanent copy link up here. You can see it's flashing temporary copy there. But now what I want to do is I'm going to open up a different one. I'm going to open up that R Markdown one. So I just I just pasted that URL that I put in the chat. I just pasted it into the browser here. So now you can see it's the week 4 R Markdown now. And you can see I'm opening it from Elizabeth Holmes, NOAA Federal. Not who I am here, I'm EEHolmes here. So I've got the temporary copy of this thing that I created. If I want to make a permanent copy, I click that over there. Just save a permanent copy. But I'm going to work in the temporary copy. I don't need a permanent copy, because all I want to do is illustrate how I as a student, I didn't set this space up, but I can run the files in here and it's all going to work. So let's start with let's start with this IO slides. So IO slides, it requires a few special packages to work. So let's go ahead but I installed those, or NOAA, my NOAA Federal account had it all set up, and I can click knit. It's going to complain. I think if I try again, it works. There we go. Yep. And there we go. It all worked. I don't have that button. Oh no. Melanie, did you log into RStudio Cloud? If you're with a Google account? Possible that. Interesting. You have it in Firefox, not in Chrome. Huh, that's strange. Okay, I don't know if that's a Chrome thing. That's strange. Okay, well, at least you got it in Firefox. Good. Okay, so I was able to create this presentation. Okay, so let's see. Aha, yes, Eric, thank you for pointing that out. It is right here. Yep, it's a ball of yarn. If you have this really small, it's entirely possible these things start disappearing. Yes, there it goes. As I shrunk the window, it did disappear. So if you make it bigger, the text appears. I wonder if If I made this really small, also the thing that says save permanent copy is disappearing, but if I make it bigger, the text appears. Perhaps it's that. So am I so open an editor or view? You can just say view in web browser. Yep. So if you don't have knit, it's that the window is too small. That's okay. Just look for the little ball of yarn here. There is a preview button instead of knit. How very strange. Okay. Yep. Not sure why. Okay. Okay. Yes. So my guess is that you hit the HTML instead of the RMD. So that says open an editor or view in browser. So what you want to open is the one that says R Markdown, this one. So don't open the HTML, open the R Markdown ones. Got it? Okay. Great. Okay, so let's open a different R Markdown. And let's do the math one. I think the math one's kind of nice because that one shows how to do LaTeX. So don't hit the PDF, hit the R Markdown one, the RMD. And now I'm going to make this a little bigger so that the knit text shows up. If you don't see it, just look for the little ball of yarn. And if I click knit, it should automatically go to PDF, but if it doesn't, you click the little arrow next to it and say knit to PDF. It's okay, try again. And the PDF shows up with some hairy math in there. So this is showing that example where, you know, it's super easy to set it up so that people can knit to a PDF. There's nothing that has to be installed. When I set up this workspace, I didn't have to do anything because there's a full LaTeX installation in there. The Pandoc is installed. It just works. I just have to install the necessary packages, but they're the completely standard things that you need to knit R Markdown files. So knitter and R Markdown is what I had to install. Also, I'm pretty sure if I knit to HTML, that should work just fine too. Try again. It's not looking like pop-up. Yeah, there we go. And it just works so nice. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now what I need to, so I'm going to pause for a second. Are there any questions? Because I'm going to shift to something kind of different, which is how to link to Git and GitHub. Okay, great. Not seeing any questions. So let me show you how to link up to GitHub. So I've jumped back over to Chrome and I'm back at my Noah account here. So let me, and I'm going to get out of this workspace Okay, great. So I am going to, let's see here. Let's see here. All right, so this is that PSAW1 that I created. And now what I'm going to do, let's see, what do I want to do? I think actually I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go back to my workspace and I'm going to create a project based on a repository. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go over to GitHub where I have repositories. So I'm just going to head over to GitHub. And this is a repository that I created on GitHub for the purpose of this workshop. It's nothing special whatsoever. It just has a README file and a test.r script. Nothing special. What is important here is that if I want to be able to communicate back to this repository, that means if I want to make changes on RStudio Cloud and push them back up to GitHub, then I need to make sure that I have permissions to do that on that repository. So in this case, it's my repository. I have that permission. But you could also do this if you wanted to copy somebody else's files. So let's say a repository I don't have permission to make changes to, I could still copy the link to that repository and get all those files into RStudio Cloud. I just couldn't push changes back up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my own repositories and show you how to do that link up. So I copy the URL. It's always the first step you want to do when you're loading. And I go to this new project, click that, and I click new project from Git repository. That, and the URL, there it is. Moment. Okay, so now all of a sudden this tab here, the Git tab, shows up. So because I basically cloned this repository in, it knows that it's a Git repository, so it's going to have that Git tab show up. And it's got the files there. There's that test.r. There's the README. There's nothing special there. Okay, but that's what it pulled in from GitHub. And because I pulled this in from GitHub, I don't need to tell it to use Git, but let me show you how you, or to show you where that's specified. If I use tools, and then I think I can do either project options or global options. Let's use global options. And you see here, Git SVN right there, and you can see it says enable. And there it tells you where Git is. You don't need to browse that. You don't need to add that. It's just all set up for you. But if you had a something you wanted to use Git with and you hadn't pulled it in from GitHub, then you would just check that, and it would set this up for you. Okay. But because I pulled it in from GitHub, it checked it. Okay. Great. So I have that there, and now that I have that there, I can make some changes. Let's make some changes and go ahead and commit those. are and you see in the Git tab that change shows up here. I am going to click that. I'm going to commit. So I'm going to make a little note about what the change is. So here's the message. I add my commit message, my note about that. I add a line. I'm going to commit that. So I'm basically creating the record of what the change is. I haven't pushed that up to GitHub. I'm just making a note about what I'm doing here. All right. So first time you do this, you're going to get this message. Okay. It's only going to be the first time. So don't worry about that. And you have to run these commands. And it's basically doing the git config, you say your user email and your user name. So basically when you do commits, it's associated with your email and your name. So you need to run these commands. And, you know, I wish it would give more helpful information here. But where you need to run these commands is at the terminal window. So let me show you how you get there. So first, what I want to do is I'm going to copy this. So paste it into the terminal. So I close that. I need to remember I do this. I go back here and you click that little cog, shell. That's terminal window. That's what you want. See, it's in this project and it's going to remember this. Remember, when you close this out, you're not going to have to do this again. It's going to remember this. Should have copied that somewhere. Okay. I have this, so you might want to write that down because that thing disappeared and I tried to copy it and it didn't work, but I have it. This is what it is. User, it wants this email. And so I just, oh, sorry, put in quotes. That, and then the next one is git config. There we go. All right, so I ran that. And so now let's try again. Git config. Okay, so there. And I hit, so I did that really fast. Let me do this. So now I've given it that information. So I'm back in this Git tab. So I want to do the note about the change. Now I hit the commit. This pop-up window comes and I add a little message. I click what I want this message to be about. I'm just going to do the README. There it is. And what did I do? It shows me what happened here. So I can look there what that was. Add a line, RStudio. Great. So now it worked. Next time when I close this, come back in, it's going to work. So all this does, though, is it's sort of getting a record of the changes, but I haven't pushed those up to GitHub. So let me show you how that push works, because there's another step you have to take care of once. Again, this is going to remember it. You just have to do it once. So I go push. It asks for my username. Now it asks for my password. And here it's asking for your password, but it's not actually the password it wants. It wants something called a user token. And I'll show you the steps. You do not have to memorize this. All you have to remember is to Google, just say, you know, GitHub personal access token. something like that, and you'll come up with the instructions. But I want to see it so you've seen it before. If you ever have to do it, it can be hard to know what to do if you've never seen it. Okay, so I have that thing. It's asking for my password. It wants this token from GitHub, and the way you do that is you go onto GitHub. I'm here at GitHub. Doesn't matter what repository I'm at. I just need to be on GitHub. I go to my user place over here. Go all the way down to settings. Shows up here. Developer settings, and they really hide this. It's personal access tokens. That's what it wants. So you click generate a token. And I can call this anything. It really doesn't matter. The name is not what's important. The important part is the next step. So I say how long I want this token to work. Make it indefinite if it's something you always want to connect to, or you can put, a limit. I'll do 30 days. And so this is saying I'm allowing RStudio Cloud to contact GitHub for 30 days. That's what's going on here for this particular repository. I need to tell it what I'm allowing GitHub Cloud, RStudio Cloud to do, and I just want it to interact with the repository. Okay, not all these other things, just this. I'm limiting the scope of what I'm allowing it to do. I generate the token, and I copy it. Now I head back to RStudio Cloud here. Oh, here it is. Okay, and now I get back to where it's asking for the password, and I got to paste that token in. That's what's going on here. Oh, it pushes. So that thing with the personal access token, that's not specific to RStudio Cloud. It's something you have to do whenever you're interacting with GitHub now. And when it asks for your password, you have to generate these tokens. First time you do it, it's a little puzzling, but you have to do it so often, you get pretty good at it. Okay. Great. So I am going to go back to Q&A. The chat up here. Okay. What's this? Okay. Any other questions about interacting with this? You may be wondering what the shared space is. So this is a space where you could collaborate. So in the free account, you only get one shared space, and you can have 4 people in here. So this is a space where you can invite people. This is when I am collaborating with one other person. And so I can see his code, he can see my code. We can't be in the same project at the same time because there'd be conflicts. So we do kind of have to communicate to each other, when we're in. But this is really helpful to be able to debug or collaborate on something. So Nikolai, no, I would not use this instead of using RStudio on my own computer. The free version is fairly limited. I only get 1 GB of RAM. Can definitely run out of that. And also I only get 25 hours a month. So I don't use it for that. I do use it when I need to share some code with someone. I want them to be able to run something. instead of giving them a long list of things that they need to install, I said, hey, try this out. They can just, try it out. So all I have to do is send them the link to that web space. You can see you can log in with your Google account. They really don't have to do anything. It just works. Yeah, so in a demo troubleshooting situation, I use it in classes often. For example, like if I'm teaching our Markdown class, I don't want them to, run into the trouble that they can't, knit to a PDF, or run everything. I don't want them to have to install everything, like it's just a lot of like spin up just to be able to run a few R Markdown files. Another way that I would use it is, say if I had some code where I wanted someone to be able to knit an R Markdown file or knit to a PDF, I can set everything up and just send them that link. They can knit to the PDF, upload the data that they want to be running, and then download the PDF without having to install anything. Jennifer, the shared option is, it's not going to say shared standee. You have to create the new space. So click new space here, and then you create that shared space. Okay. All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit, and talk about my experiences using this as an instructor. And so I teach a lot of workshops, and I would definitely like to use RStudio in a workshop setting. And they're really billing it as a way that you can teach, and it has some limitations for that, especially if you're not part of a university. So if you have other questions that are just sort of like not involving the teaching applications, do feel free to shoot those in the chat, and I'll get to those too. But now I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the limitations if you're trying to like use this in a teaching situation. All right, so let's go back here. I mean, some of the positives too, but also some of the limitations. Okay, so we're going to part 2. So if you, I'm on the website, if you click the website and you go all the way down to part 2, that's where I'm at here. So I've already showed you the example where you can create something, you give students a link, and they can open up a temporary copy. They can save that copy, and that is, really nice. It just makes a really easy entry for students. They can immediately start working. So students or participants, in a workshop, they can immediately start working, and that's really great. One of the things that would be really even better is if you had special software that your workshop needed. So Stan is a great example. Later in these PSAW training sessions, we've got an example or a workshop on using TMB. So that would be another great one that it would be great if we could just create an environment that students could use. And we can, but in that case, we're running up against this the limitations of the free version. But let's see an example of like where things can work really well. So I've taught, or I will be teaching, a workshop on creating R packages. And so I want students to be able to just jump in right away and build R packages without having to install anything. And I don't want, I want it to work regardless of what kind of computer they're on, or if they're on any computer at all. Maybe they're on a tablet or, you know, a phone or something. I just want them to be able to jump in and do it. So this is a project. I posted the link in the chat where it's for a test package. So this is a test package from a different account. This is not my NOAA account, it looks like. Yeah, not my NOAA account. But what it is it is a RStudio, oh, sorry, not RStudio, it is an R package. And so it's an environment where I've set up, it's got everything for an R package. And the students can just take that, and you can see immediately, without them having to do anything, it just is all set up, and they can immediately build this R package. So install and restart. And you can watch over here. I'll do this again. So when you have an R package, if it's a folder, a project that is an R package, it recognizes that based on the files here, particularly this description file is what's cluing it in that it's a R package. And when that is there, you've got this build tab, and I can build, install, and restart, and it builds. It just builds the package. So the students didn't have to install anything. This I know it's going to work for them, and then we can start immediately kind of jumping in to learning about how we build R packages. So, you know, we can talk about the R folder and, you know, how to write functions for an R package, you know, how to write, you know, documentation, and we can just jump right in, start doing, and not worry about setting up the platform. So I would say like this is a case where it works great as an instructor. And the students can be doing this in the free version. We don't have to pay for anything. So that's where it works really great. So pros there is, you know, sharing a link like this. It's really simple. Doesn't take much time at all to set up. I mean, literally, I just sort of set it up the same way I would on my desktop. I just put the same files onto RStudio Cloud, load up the packages, share the link. It doesn't matter how many students I have. You have hundreds and hundreds because they're running this all on their own RStudio Cloud account. And again, they just log in with their Google account. It's completely scalable. They can work in a temporary copy or save to their account if they want to save the work. So the cons to just sharing a link like I did, like I just put in the chat here, is you can't see their work. So like it'd be hard for me to help debug. so it's not for collaborating. I can share, but I can't really collaborate. And depending on the nature of what you're doing, not being able to see their work could be a real downside, right? Like if you had a small workshop and you're trying to help people, you really want to be able to see their work. And then another con is that you personally might have the premium account with lots of RAM, but they are going to be opening this up in the free account, which only has 1 gig. So you have to be aware of that. If you have a souped up premium account, which gives you a whole lot of RAM, you could easily create something that they're not able to run in the free account. And the premium account is expensive. It's like $99 a month, which is crazy. Definitely you wouldn't expect your students would have the souped up account. So another option working with students is that I can create a shared space. So here's an example of a shared space. If you want to create a shared space, click this new space. So here's a shared space. And the nice thing about a shared space is that like I can see all their work and I can collaborate with them. But there's a huge limitation in the free account, which is that you get like 4 members. Yeah, it's not saying how many members, but oh yeah, this space can have up to 3 more members, which is hardly any, right? So that's in the free version, that's not really enough except teaching in a very limited situation. So that's a downside. So you can upgrade. So you can upgrade to get more. So let's go over to plans and pricing. So if I were to get premium, which the list price is $99 a month, which seems like a lot to me. But if I did that, then I get up to 8 gigabytes of RAM per project. That's great. And I have, well, they're not saying how many students, how many people I can have in a shared space, but I can have a lot. If you're associated with an academic institution, the cloud instructor is the way to go because that's at a really steep discount. So if I were using it for instructing, because I'm affiliate faculty at the University of Washington, I would definitely be doing it as a cloud instructor. But if you don't have that, yeah, that's pretty steep there. Okay. So those are kind of the easy entry options for using it in a setting where you're teaching or you're trying to collaborate or work together with a large group of people. And that the workspace version is really nice. Like I said, you can see their work, you can give feedback and problem solve, and you can work on the same project all together. You can't be in the same project at the same time, but you know, they can leave and you can get in. The cons, the big thing is, I think, is the cost. But another con is that, well, I put the con here that I wasn't sure it would scale up to hundreds of students. I think actually it does scale up to hundreds of students, but the only way that would be really economical, I think, is if you had the instructor account. So if you were affiliated with an academic institution. So let's talk a little bit about special software. And so this is a really great feature of using a cloud platform, is that you can set up this environment that has software that can be a real pain to install. And that could be a real barrier for people to learn or just to use. So Stan is a good example. Like that can be a barrier for people to install. I don't think it'd be a problem for me to install. You know, I've got kind of a souped up machine, but in my teaching situations, you'll see people with, you know, really variety of operating systems and capabilities and access, whether they have access to be able to install software on the machine, all kinds of things that can really make it hard for them to use special software. And as an instructor, you could spend just terrific amounts of time trying to help your students get set up. So by creating a cloud environment, you have that setup time, but once it's set up, it just works for the students. So that's a really big plus of using a cloud environment. But like I said, for RStudio Cloud, you've got this limitation of 1 gig RAM in the free plus. So you can get Stan running, but you're going to need the premium, because you can't get Stan running with 1 gig RAM, and you certainly can't run any of even simple models are going to max that out, and then it just doesn't work. So either you've got to have an instructor account, or you have to pay the $99 a month to get the premium. If you're thinking about this, it's something that you might want to do at some point. I would suggest that you look into using Amazon Web Services and setting up a RStudio server. It's going to be potentially cheaper, quite a bit cheaper. But there is one case that does work on RStudio Cloud nicely, and that is JAGS. So if you want to use JAGS, they have JAGS installed. It doesn't use so much RAM. So here's an example. You can click on that. This is a homework that I gave students. And so I wanted them to learn a little bit about JAGS. I didn't want them to have to bother to install it. I wanted it to just work. And so this is a homework that we gave out to students using JAGS. But like the SDTMB, that there's going to be a session on that later, that's going to run into the problem of 1 gig RAM is not enough. So if you try to run that and install it, let's see. Sorry, don't want to do that. I want to copy the link. So here is an example. This is, I'm trying to install SDTMB, and this is a package that needs an C++ compiler, and it's got quite a bit of RCPP code in it. And you should be able to just run this R code and install from GitHub. But if you do that, you get this error. The compilation fails. It will work fine on like my desktop, work fine on your desktop, but it's not installing on RStudio Cloud. And it doesn't tell you what the problem is, but I know what the problem is because I've run into this many times, is that if you try to install it and you install and you watch the RAM, you're going to see that RAM hit, and then once it does, you get this error. So you're not able to install SD in TMB. Similar Stan, you can try it here. This was an RStudio Cloud project. Somebody got Stan running about 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago, and then they updated Stan, and now it requires more than 1 gig RAM, and it doesn't work. However, it's kind of interesting if you want to be able to demo these kind of things with people. so if you want to demo stand, for example, I would look into Kaggle. It may be a way to easily share things. So let's go here, copy this link here. So there's a lot, like I said, the field is really going towards these virtual machines, and you're going to see a lot of different, or not a lot, a few different options for how you can set up a virtual machine super easy. I mean, it's not hard anymore. It's some of these, like for example, Bender. If you've ever heard of Bender, that one is now integrated with GitHub. All you do is paste a GitHub URL into a little box on Bender, and boom, it creates a virtual machine to run that code, and it recognizes what kind of code you have. But that this link here is a Kaggle notebook. So this is another, it's kind of a virtual machine that will run notebooks. And Kaggle has Stan installed. So if you want to show off some Stan models, Stan is a Bayesian modeling, very popular Bayesian modeling software. So you can do that in Kaggle. Oh, got it. Okay, yeah, here it is. You have to poke around a little bit, but it's got the code there, and you can kind of run it. And this is pretty cool because just demoing a Stan project is pretty hard. I mean, there's a bit of say. I mean, if you had to have people install it, there's a lot of friction there. For something like SDM-TMB, you can set it up. You can install it on Kaggle. Let me show you here. Actually, jump back here. A nice thing about Kaggle. Let's see if it shows here. Okay. Try this one. So a nice thing about Kaggle is you're not limited to 1 gig. It can go up to 16 gig, and it just throttles it. And it's completely free, which is pretty interesting. So something to play around with if you get in a situation where you need to demo something that's pretty intensive. Yeah. So the thing with STMB is I was saying that when you install it, it's going using more than 1 gig. I forget how much it ended up using for installing. It's I think it was like 3 or so. So the way this works, like if you have to like install special things like that, you can run the code to install it, and it'll take some time. But once the user runs that, then they're able to run the SDM-TMB codes. For example, if you were doing that session later and you didn't want to install SDM-TMB on your computer for whatever reason, you could come to this notebook, run it, it'd get it all installed, and then you could run the examples. Okay, so I have one more kind of bit I want to share, and then I'm going to stop. And we can just kind of open it up for questions. So alternatives. If this kind of setting up virtual machines is something you have been thinking about, but you haven't dove in, here are some links to showing how I set up a Jupyter Hub on Amazon Web Services. It's really not that hard. There are quite a few steps involved, but it's not that hard. even easier is to use Bender. And this shows you how to set up an RStudio server on Bender. Amazon Web Services, you do have to pay for, although you can use the free tier for the first year. Bender is free. So, yeah, Bender is very easy to use. It's a free virtual machine that will run your code. Okay, great. I am going to stop there. We can open it up. Any questions that you have, just feel free to jump in, ask questions.